My name is Richard Wilkinson, and this is Kate Pickett. We want to talk about the research we've done that's explained in this new book of ours called The Spirit Level. It's a bit of an odd title, but you'll see as we go along there are a lot of graphs with sloping lines on them, and I suppose the idea was that a spirit level tells you about slopes. But anyway, the subtitle is more informative. Why more equal societies almost always do better. And what we're going to do, the research we've been doing came really out of initially research on health inequalities, the big social class differences in death rates between rich and poor. And we've realized over time that a lot of the causes of that are shared by all sorts of other social problems. And so in a way what we have to tell you about is the effects of social hierarchy, of whether societies have bigger inequalities or smaller ones, on not only health but a whole lot of other problems. And the results are really quite striking and unexpected. I think when I first got into this, I never thought that the world would work quite as clearly and simply as it appears to. What I want to start with is really a sort of picture that we are, if you like, the first generation to have to think about how we improve the real quality of human life. In the rich countries, it's no longer economic growth which improves the quality of our lives. For thousands of years, I suppose, the best way of improving the quality of human life has been simply to raise material living standards. But we've got to the end of that process. If you look at this graph, you see that here you've got life expectancy. There's 50 years, there's 70 years, 80 years, and along the bottom you've got national income per person. That's, if you like, where countries have got to in the long process of economic growth. So here are the poor countries in the early stages of economic growth, and you see life expectancy rises very fast initially, but then it levels out. And we're going to be talking about these rich countries. You see there's Japan, Spain, Germany, Belgium, Austria, rich developed countries which are on this flat part of the curve where it doesn't make very much difference whether the whole society is a little bit richer or not. It doesn't make much difference to life expectancy. And over time, although life expectancy goes on improving, it's not because we move out along that curve, it's because actually the whole curve gets higher over time. But it's not just life expectancy that ceases to improve with economic growth. It's also something like happiness. Instead of life expectancy on this vertical axis here, you have the percent of the population who say they're very happy or quite happy. You see there's a remarkably similar shape. Rapid rises in the early stages of development, and then it flattens off. And so that's picture, it makes rather little difference what measure of well-being you use, whether health or happiness, or there are genuine progress indicators or various other things, and you can look at it cross-sectionally like this at one point in time, or you can look at countries changing over time. So you can see as Britain or the United States or Japan has got, well, sometimes 4 times as rich over a period of a generation or so, 50 years or so, and yet no change in measures of well-being. So, you know, we have got to the point where we have to think now how else to improve the quality of human life. It's important in the poorer countries still to raise material standards, but no longer in the rich world. There's one point I think is worth making at this stage, which is a little separate from the rest of what we want to say, but about the environmental implications. This is very like that first graph I showed you. It's still got life expectancy up the side here, but instead of having gross national income along the bottom, it's got carbon dioxide emissions, i.e. the emission of greenhouse gases, which we know are leading to climate change and global warming. And of course it's a very similar shape to the one with gross national income. And you see this early stages of economic development, rapid rises in life expectancy and then flattening out again. But another way of looking at it is that actually you can achieve the high living standards and levels of happiness, of well-being and so on, without going beyond these sorts of levels of CO2 emissions. These ones are gaining no extra benefit, apparently, in life expectancy. And so maybe when you think of green policies of contraction and convergence, what we need to be thinking of is trying to move societies into this sort of area where we put this circle. Reducing carbon emissions without hopefully reducing health or happiness. And of course in the poorer countries we're trying to we want those countries to move up into that sort of area. So that's where we'd converge. I think one of the clear things that people often feel intuitively is our societies are materially very successful, but perhaps many social failings. You know, increasingly I think what people worry about in our societies is the social development. And there are all sorts of worries, whether it's drugs or teenage births or mental health or whatever it is, or violence. People often feel there's something going wrong in our societies and how consumerist we are. And I suppose, in a way, one way of encapsulating what we have to say is that we want to move from thinking about the quality of human life in terms of raising material living standards to dealing with the social environment, if you like, from the material environment to the social environment that we've now got to improve. And this slide just shows you a sort of range of social problems that are in the news all the time, and actually there are problems we've collected data on that Kate will be showing you later on. But things like teenage births and drug problems and overcrowded prisons and antisocial behavior, you know, all these things that come up in the news all the time. One of the really important points, I think often when people talk about these problems, they know they have a social gradient, by which I mean simply that they're more common in the poorest areas of our societies. Nearly always violence is highest in the poorest neighborhoods, and you know, most of the social problems, although they exist higher up in society, they're more common lower down. And very often people think this is because of poverty, absolute poverty, and try and explain it in terms of maybe bad housing or poor health in terms of air pollution or whatever it is. But I think there's a very important contrast that has to be made, and that is, if you look at income between societies, these rich societies that I started off with on the flat part of the curve, you remember I showed you initially. Here's just part of that first graph, where again we've got life expectancy here, and we've got national income per person here, but no longer the poor tail of the distribution, just the rich countries. And there is no relationship at all between life expectancy and national income per capita. So countries like Norway and USA can be almost twice as rich as Greece and Portugal and Israel, not quite twice as rich, and it makes no difference to their standard of living. And this isn't because, you know, there's something silly going on with exchange rates. It's adjusted for what things cost in each society. So the ones to the right here can buy almost twice as much of everything as the ones on the left. So income apparently in the developed world no longer means very much. But if you look within any of these countries, you find these extraordinary social gradients, in this case in health. But if you looked at almost any social problem, you would see a similar social gradient.